Listen to the quiet truth that keeps trying to reach you beneath the noise of deadlines, bills, and the hum of ambition. There is a part of you that is tired of running, not because the goal is wrong, but because the way has been costly. You have felt it in your chest, that tightness that appears when the numbers don't match the effort, when sleep doesn't silence the worry, when you succeed and still feel strangely unfinished. I see that. I honor that. The search for prosperity is not greed in you. It is the longing to care for those you love, to build something that lasts, to finally breathe without waiting for the ground to shift under your feet. Tonight, we will let that longing breathe. We will let it stand in the light without shame. And together, we will ask a better question. What if the wealth you're pursuing is not a destination you reach by force, but a byproduct of the person you are becoming? The body knows the difference. When you are chasing, your nervous system tightens, your breath shortens, your vision narrows to the next transaction. Scarcity narrows your mind and hardens your jaw. It pushes you into loud rooms, quick wins, and fragile promises. But when you are aligned, your breath deepens, the shoulders lower, the prefrontal mind lights up, pattern recognition returns, and choices grow spacious. In that state, ideas connect, relationships trust you, and opportunity stops feeling like a lottery and starts acting like a loyal friend. This is practical spirituality, the inner life shaping the outer life, the unseen posture directing the seen results. This is emotional neuroscience meeting ancient wisdom, not as decoration, but as design. Solomon understood this design. He is remembered as the richest, but he did not start with a vault. He started with a request. He asked for wisdom to govern well, clarity to serve the whole, discernment to weigh people and problems with integrity. History says wealth found him after that, but the order matters. Wisdom first, then wealth. Repeat that quietly with me as a rhythm your heart can keep. Wisdom first, then wealth. Not because money is unimportant, but because money is a poor captain and an excellent servant. When wisdom leads, wealth follows and stays. When wealth leads, wisdom is silenced and everything you build begins to tremble. This is not a slogan. It is a sequence. It is a way of being that reorganizes your decisions, your calendar, your conversations, and the atmosphere of your home. If you have ever felt invisible at work, if you have ever been the reliable one who still waits for the phone to ring, you know how brutal the grind can be when effort is not translated into value. That grind does something to the soul. It frays your patience and teaches your body to expect disappointment. Yet even here, there is mercy. Even here, you can choose a wiser request. You can ask, as Solomon did, not for the trophy, but for the lens. Give me the understanding that turns noise into signal, that turns skill into service, that turns service into trust. Notice how your gut softens when the goal shifts from having more to perceiving better. Notice how your breathing changes when the target is not accumulation, but alignment. Your body knows when the path is true. Your mind knows when the story finally makes sense. Here is the promise of this journey we are beginning. We will not glorify shortcuts, and we will not glorify struggle for its own sake. We will trace a quieter architecture. We will follow the thread of wisdom through judgment, alliances, excellence, and systems, the same thread that turned a young leader's request into a nation's flourishing. And we will keep it practical, because wisdom that cannot be lived is only noise with a crown on its head. As we move, I will ask you questions meant to slow you down just enough for clarity to overtake hurry. I will offer simple daily practices that, if repeated with humility, will shift more than mood. They will shift momentum. Slow is not failure here. Slow is faithful. Slow builds what quickness cannot keep. You may still carry the fear that if you loosen your grip, everything will fall apart. Hear this with compassion and firmness. Gripping is not the same as guarding. You were not designed to white-knuckle your destiny. You were designed to steward it. There is a difference, and your nervous system has been trying to tell you which is which. Tonight, we exchange the panic of control for the peace of stewardship. We use both spirit and science, prayerful attention and practical patterning, to unlearn scarcity and relearn discernment, wisdom before wealth, order before overflow, character before crowns, and when the order is right, the outcomes become sustainable. So welcome to this room where your desire for prosperity is not mocked, where your sensitivity is not a liability, where your hope is not naive. We will walk carefully. We will walk honestly. We will walk with the confidence that ancient counsel and modern understanding agree on this one thing. When wisdom is the first request, wealth stops being a chase and starts becoming a companion. Take a deeper breath. Let your shoulders drop. You are not late. You are not behind. You are simply at the beginning of a wiser path, and that beginning is the most valuable thing you own. There comes a moment when the hunger for more finally admits the deeper truth that more is not enough. The body knows this before the mind can confess it. The jaw tightens with each transaction that wins the day, yet loses the soul. The breath falters after another late night of calculations that refuse to add up to peace. The heart keeps reaching for something more stable than numbers and more generous than chance. In that moment, the ancient story becomes more than history. It becomes a mirror. A young leader once stood before an open future and did not ask for gold or victory or applause. He asked for wisdom to govern well. He asked for an inner instrument that could hear through the noise and weigh what others only measured. Wealth came later. The order matters. Wisdom first, then wealth. Said slowly, this sequence becomes a kind of medicine that quiets the nervous system and clears the fog around the eyes. Said honestly, it becomes the threshold to a different life. Most of us were trained to chase outcomes and argue with limits. That training carves grooves in the brain that speed us toward the familiar reward and away from the deeper reward. Scarcity settles into muscle memory. Shoulders rise. Vision narrows. The body shifts into survival, and survival cannot perceive long games. In survival, the inner courtroom is loud and reactive. Judgment is rushed. Risk is misread. People feel like threats or tools, not partners. Desire gets noisy, and fear becomes the project manager. Solomon's request disrupts this pattern at the root. To ask for wisdom is to ask for a different posture in the body and a different rhythm in the mind. Curiosity replaces panic. Discernment replaces hurry. The prefrontal mind lights up when threat signals are calmed. And when threat is calmed, judgment grows accurate. This is not theory floating above real life. This is practical spirituality married to emotional neuroscience. It is the very human way that the unseen life steers the seen one. There is a reason his story links wisdom to wealth without confusing the two. Wisdom is the architect. Wealth is the building. Wisdom is the map. Wealth is the territory. When the map is true, the territory can be navigated without constant damage control. When the architect understands weight, the building stands even under weather. Many have gathered riches without this architecture and found their rooms cold and unstable. Many have reached targets without a map and discovered they could not repeat the path. It is not punishment. It is simply the way things are built. When inner order precedes outer overflow, both endure. When outer overflow tries to lead, inner order collapses under the noise. Imagine the scene that made his name known to the nations. Two voices, one child, a room full of tension, and a decision that pierced to the core of the matter. That judgment did more than solve a dispute. It broadcast an atmosphere. It told the watching world that there was a leader whose inner scales could hold the weight of real life. That is what wisdom does. It creates trust. It organizes chaos. It makes people feel safe enough to build. And when people feel safe enough to build, they bring their resources, not because they are coerced, but because they are convinced. Effort alone does not translate into honor. Hours are not the currency. Resolved uncertainty is. This is why the market pays those who can read the room and steady the ship. This is why tribute follows clarity. The mind that hears this often whispers a protest. But I have worked so hard. But I have done all that was asked. But I am still unseen. That pain is real. It is not a weakness. It is the fatigue of living in a world that rewards visible noise more quickly than it rewards invisible integrity. Set down the shame that tries to attach itself to that fatigue. There is another path that does not require a louder performance. There is a quieter request that reorganizes everything you carry. Wisdom first, then wealth. spoken as a prayer, spoken as a plan, spoken as a rhythm you can keep when the room is loud again. In the pages that preserve his story, wisdom is not a trophy on a shelf. It is a way of perceiving that turns skill into service and service into trust. It is an inner equilibrium that becomes an outer economy. In that economy, decisions are weighed not only by what they pay today, but by what they preserve tomorrow. In that economy, the right next step is not always the biggest or the shiniest. It is the step that serves the whole. The nervous system can feel the difference. The shoulders lower when the yes is clean. The breath deepens when the no is honest. Patterns emerge where noise used to be. Opportunities approach without demanding a part of you that you cannot give away. There is a simple practice that many have found healing because it is small enough to repeat and strong enough to shift the day. Some call it the wisdom first ritual. At the start of the morning, before the tide of noise rises, a person names one decision that truly matters and holds one question up to the light. What choice serves the whole and not only the self? Not an order, not a performance, a posture, a prayer, a clearing of the inner room so that judgment can work with clean hands. The brain loves this kind of clarity. It reduces scattered attention and quiets the reflex to please the loudest voice. Over time, the small practice begins to compounding. The day bends toward integrity. The week bends toward alignment. The life bends toward a steadier kind of prosperity. Picture a mason setting the first stone at the base of a great house. It is quiet work and no crowd gathers, yet the future of the entire structure rests on the accuracy of this moment. That stone carries a line of weight no eye can see. When it is true, every floor above it finds its balance. When it is false, every ornament hides a hairline fracture. Wisdom is that foundation stone. It is not glamorous. It will never trend, but it will bear the weight of everything you intend to build. Lay it once, and you will return to it often. Touch it when the winds rise. Remember it when new rooms are added. Trust it when noise tempts you to move faster than truth. The heart may still ask a tender question. If abundance arrived quickly, would the current judgment protect it, or would it vanish like mist in heat? Sit with that without accusation. It is not a test to pass. It is a light to see by. The answer is not a verdict on your worth. It is a signal about the next layer of wisdom that wants to find you. If the answer is uneasy, hope is not gone. Hope has just clarified what it needs. Solomon's beginning is not distant from yours. Under different skies, with different tools, the same pattern waits. Ask for the lens rather than the glitter. Ask for the inner measure rather than the outer measure. In time, the outer will arrive, and when it does, it will not own you. It will serve you. It will serve your people. It will serve the work that outlives your years. This is the secret that is not really a secret. This is the oldest new thing you have been circling. A sequence, a posture, a foundation stone. Wisdom first, then wealth. There is a turning point in every life where effort stops explaining the gap between what is given and what returns. The hours are long. The reports are clean. The smile is practiced, yet something essential remains unpaid. The body feels that gap before the bank account confirms it. Shoulders climb toward the ears. Sleep loses depth. Thoughts keep circling and never land. Underneath the noise lives a quieter truth. People do not exchange money for exertion. People exchange money for relief. They look for the one who reads what others only stare at, who weighs what others only count, who steadies the room when emotion clouds the facts. That is judgment in its most human form. That is value before any coin appears. An old story brings this into focus with painful tenderness. A crowded chamber, voices tangled around a single child, accusations flying like sparks in dry straw, then a sentence that divides pretense from truth. The moment is searing because the decision is not merely clever, it is accurate about love. It reveals the heart, that would rather lose a claim than harm a life. That kind of judgment does more than solve a case. It creates an environment where people feel safe to bring their best. Safety becomes order. Order becomes productivity. Productivity becomes surplus. Surplus becomes generosity. Tribute follows not as flattery, but as recognition that someone is carrying the weight of uncertainty for the many. Modern rooms are less dramatic on the surface, yet no less charged. Deadlines compete. Data argues with intuition. Everyone is busy, and few are clear. In such rooms, the presence that calms the nervous system is the presence that gets invited back. Pay attention to the way your breath changes when someone enters who can separate noise from signal. Pay attention to how your mind loosens when a path forward is named without bravado. The body trusts what is steady. Clients trust what is steady. Teams trust what is steady. People do not pay for effort. They pay for certainty. Say it slowly so the truth can settle. People do not pay for effort. They pay for certainty. Effort still matters. Skill still matters. Hours still matter. But they matter as wood and stone matter to a builder. They are not the house. The house is the judgment that arranges them into shelter. Without that inner architect, the parts fight rather than cooperate. With that architect, the parts become a home that keeps out the weather. In the same way, work becomes wealth when judgment turns activity into outcomes that others can feel. An anxious organization becomes a calm operation. A confusing offer becomes a clear promise. A risky decision becomes a measured step. Money follows this quiet alchemy because money seeks reduced risk the way water seeks the low places. There is an image that helps, the true scale, not the noisy scale that rewards hustle without measure. The inner scale that tests whether a choice is fair, whether a story matches the facts, whether the gain today will rot the foundation tomorrow. Ancient wisdom speaks of honest scales as delight, not as decoration. Honest inside becomes honest outside. When a person carries a true scale, rooms reorganize around them. People breathe easier. Teams align. Partners stop guarding against hidden costs. Trust compounds quietly in the background until one day it looks like momentum. If invisibility has followed you, there is grief in that. There is also clarity hiding inside the ache. Invisibility often lingers, where contribution is described as effort rather than outcome. Titles and tasks do not speak for themselves. What speaks is the difference created in the life of another. The hospital that is calmer because you redesigned a process that once bled minutes and now saves lives. The client who stops waking in the night because their numbers finally make sense and they know why. The studio that turns chaos into a repeatable rhythm because your judgment set a cadence where none existed. These are outcomes. Outcomes lower cortisol in other bodies. Outcomes pull gratitude out of reluctant hands. There is a gentle practice that builds this lens without theatrics. A person quietly considers the gifts they carry and translates each one into a problem resolved and a result that can be felt. Instead of "I am good with spreadsheets," the truth becomes "I create clarity." Where money once felt like mist, instead of "I am dependable," the truth becomes projects finish on time and people exhale. Instead of "I am creative," the truth becomes messages finally land, and audiences respond with trust rather than applause alone. When gifts are framed this way, the mind hears the sound of value, and the market hears it too. Payment then arrives less like a toll and more like a thank you. The science of our inner life agrees with this old wisdom. Uncertainty heightens threat responses. Threat responses narrow perception. Narrow perception produces errors that multiply cost. Skilled judgment reverses the cascade. It names reality with compassion. It frames options without panic. It sequences steps in a way the body can accept. The prefrontal regions responsible for planning and weighing open their windows again. This is not mysticism pretending to be business. This is the humane physics of trust. Where threat decreases, generosity grows. Where generosity uncertainty grows, tribute becomes natural. There is a holy dignity in working this way. It keeps greed on a leash without killing ambition. It keeps service central without draining the self. It honors the unseen hours that sharpen perception until a single sentence can tilt an entire day toward freedom. Wealth that arrives through this door does not humiliate the soul that receives it. It strengthens that soul to keep weighing fairly, to keep reading cleanly, to keep listening for the quiet detail others miss. A question rises from this ground like a spring from rock. What uncertainty can you remove this week that would make payment feel like gratitude? The answer will not always be loud. Often, it will be a small hinge that turns a heavy door, the missing note in a report that helps an owner sleep, the sentence that transforms a pitch from fog to clear sky, the policy that brings order to a room that has learned to expect chaos. Each small removal of uncertainty becomes an invitation for resources to arrive without struggle. Value before gold is not a slogan. It is a way of standing in the world with a true scale in the heart. When judgment is clean, tribute is not an accident. It is the echo of relief in other lives. It is the sound of rooms growing safer. It is the thank you of a future that feels less fragile than the past. There is a loneliness that often hides inside the chase for prosperity. It looks like competence and long hours, yet it sounds like silence when the last email is sent and no one shares the weight with you. The body recognizes this loneliness. The shoulders hold it, the jaw clenches against it. The mind begins to mistake isolation for strength and busyness for progress. Then a different picture begins to form at the edge of awareness. Lasting wealth is not a lightning strike. It is the slow current of trusted relationships, agreements that carry value back and forth like tides that keep their appointments. Ancient memory tells of timber moving from distant mountains, of skilled hands shaping beams, of ships crossing blue distances with goods and knowledge and hope. It tells of neighboring leaders who chose cooperation over rivalry, who traded strength for strength, who bound their futures with promises kept in both directions. Riches flowed through alliances. Trade routes lengthened the reach of a single city until distant harbors felt like extensions of home. Profit became the child of trust. Every ledger line began to reflect a human bond beneath it. Every warehouse echoed with the certainty that partners would show up as promised. This is more than poetry. It is the way a nervous system settles when it is received by dependable people. Safety activates the parts of the brain that plan and weigh and sequence with clarity. In that safety, ideas surface that would not appear under threat. Patterns reveal themselves. Better questions rise to the surface. Scarcity narrows and partnership widens. When you are alone, the future feels like a cliff edge. When you are in covenant, the future feels like a road that may curve but does not disappear. Think of harbors and ships. A harbor is quiet strength. It is stone and timber prepared long before any sail appears on the horizon. It is depth measured carefully. It is light set high to guide through fog. A ship is movement and ambition. It is cargo and crew and destination. Without harbors, ships circle and waste their wind. Without ships, harbors brood over still water. Wisdom builds harbors before sending vessels. Wisdom knows that opportunities have weight and will need a place to rest. When the harbor exists, when the channel is marked, when the signal fire is lit, the sea begins to feel like a friend. Many know the ache of the lone path. Inconsistent income leaves the stomach tight. The calendar looks full, yet the accounts do not steady. Ideas feel heavy because there is no place to set them down and share the lift. The night brings a flood of possibilities, and the morning brings a list that is longer than yesterday. A person can be talented and still be tired. A person can be admirable and still be alone. The pain is not a flaw. It is a message from a life that is asking to widen. There is a gentle correction hidden here that does not shame and does not rush. Wealth scales on agreements, not on solo effort. Agreements are the quiet architecture under the skyline. They link a craftsperson to a supplier, a supplier to a distributor to a community to a voice that will vouch for the work, and a voice to a steward who can fuel the next season. Each link reduces uncertainty. Each link tells the nervous system it is safe to plan farther out and to plant deeper roots. When trust becomes the rhythm, momentum stops feeling like luck and begins to feel like weather. Some give this living web a name: Alliance Map. It begins as a page that holds the roles a mission requires. There is a space for the one who brings raw materials, a space for the one who multiplies reach, a space for the one who opens doors through their word, a space for the one who brings resources at the right time, a space for the one who sees farther and steadies the hand. Names arrive slowly and honestly. The page changes as understanding grows. At first, the drawing feels like hope. Then it begins to look like a plan your body can believe. Over time, it becomes a network that breathes. These relationships ask for more than signatures. They ask for alignment, values that match in the places that matter, pace that does not injure, promises that can be kept on hard days as well as easy ones. You can hear the difference. Rooms with covenant in the air are quieter. Deadlines still exist, yet panic does not conduct the orchestra. Problems appear and are met with clear eyes. Gratitude becomes the language of meetings. The future is spoken of without superstition or fear. The old accounts that mention cedar and fleets and shared labor also tell of mutual benefit that lasted beyond a single project. This is a mark of true partnership. It makes tomorrow better, not just today profitable. It leaves both parties stronger. It grows capacity rather than only extracting value. It teaches each team to see with the other's eyes. That kind of prosperity does not vanish when a single contract ends. It tends to deepen because memory banks trust. Reputation travels ahead like a scout. New doors open because old doors were honored. There is also a sobriety here. Agreements magnify both wisdom and folly. A careless alignment multiplies confusion. A mismatched pace injures good people. A promise made for applause and not for endurance cracks under weather. The heart that seeks covenant must keep its scales true. The questions are simple and strong. Is this fair in both directions? Can this be kept in winter as well as in harvest? Does this exchange create life beyond the balance sheet? The answers do not have to be perfect. They have to be honest. When the web holds, outcomes change in quiet ways that matter. Workflows smooth out and waste drains away. Deliveries arrive and calm spreads because someone else carried their piece faithfully. Creative rooms stop defending themselves and start creating again. Owners sleep with deeper breaths because tomorrow is not a cliff edge. Generosity rises because fear has loosened its grip. These outcomes measure wealth in more than coins. They measure it in the well-being of people who can now bring their best. There is a question that rests at the center of this chapter, and it deserves space. Which agreement, if honored for 10 years, would replace 100 short-term gigs? Let the words move through you like a tide, moving through a narrow channel. The mind will show you a face or a role or a name not yet met. The heart will register a yes or a no. The body will either tighten or soften. In that response lives direction. In that direction lives a different way of building. Harbors and ships, networks and vows, quiet pages that become living maps. This is not a rejection of ambition. It is ambition made stable. It is enterprise humanized by trust. It is prosperity that travels in company and returns home with stories rather than regrets. The sea will always be wide. The weather will always change. Yet those who build harbors and sail with friends learn a rhythm that windfalls cannot teach. They learn that riches can flow like tides when promises hold like stone. There is a quiet kind of power that rarely introduces itself with noise or glitter. It enters a room through order you can feel but cannot name, through a welcome that is calm without being cold, through details that tell the body someone has been thinking of you long before you arrived. The shoulders drop a little. The breath loosens. The mind stops scanning for danger and begins to listen. Excellence is not a costume here. It is the atmosphere created by care. It is strategy expressed as kindness, design expressed as dignity, leadership expressed as preparation. In such places, hope feels less like a gamble and more like a promise kept in advance. Ancient memory tells of a court so well arranged that a visiting queen lost her breath. She had heard reports of wisdom, but what convinced her heart were the patterns that proved it, the way the halls moved people without chaos, the way the tables spoke of provision without waste, the way attendants carried themselves with clarity and grace. Beauty was not vanity in that house. Beauty was honesty about values. Order was not control for its own sake. Order was hospitality for the many. Protocol was not stiffness. Protocol was care that moved at scale. Reputation did not begin in speeches. It began in rooms that taught the body to trust. Our present spaces speak just as clearly. A foyer that welcomes without clutter. A message that says in simple words what is true and what will happen next. An invoice that is readable and respectful. A handoff between teams that feels like a relay rather than a scramble. None of this is ornamental. Each touch point is a sentence in a story that runs when your back is turned. The story says, this is a place where things are tended. This is a place where people are seen. This is a place where time is honored. When that story repeats across moments and mediums, it becomes a voice that travels faster than any announcement you could compose. There is a deep kindness in excellence that many miss. It lowers the cognitive load carried by everyone who interacts with you. It spares them 100 small frictions that once drained their patience and goodwill. Neuroscience has a plain way to say it. The quieter the threats, the clearer the thinking. When an environment is coherent, the parts of the mind responsible for planning and weighing light up and work together. People become more creative around you because their nervous systems are no longer spending themselves on survival. Decisions grow cleaner, collaboration grows easier, conflict loses its edge because dignity is the baseline. In that climate, prosperity is not a chase, it is an outcome of peace. Consider the image of polished gates. Gates are thresholds where people decide who they will be with you. When those gates are scarred by neglect, the heart tightens and the mind prepares to defend itself. When those gates are tended, not as a performance but as a promise, the stranger becomes a guest and the guest becomes a partner. Polished gates do not lie about the house they protect. They tell the truth about it. They say you are safe to bring your best. They say you are free to exhale. They say honor lives here, and honor will not be traded for speed. Many who work with relentless integrity still feel stalled at this threshold. The craft is strong, yet the presentation whispers mixed messages. The service is dependable, yet the atmosphere around it feels improvised. The result is a gap between worth and witness. It is a painful gap because it is undeserved, and the body feels the injustice of it with every unanswered message and every near win that slips away. There is no shame in that ache. It is a faithful signal that the outer rooms must catch up to the inner life. When alignment arrives, the world finally sees what has been true all along. Reputation begins as a rumor of relief, and then it becomes a river. The Queen heard a report and traveled because excellence multiplies speech without shouting. People describe the place where they felt seen and steadied. They carry the memory forward because the body remembers safety with gratitude. That gratitude becomes your introduction in rooms you have never entered. It becomes invitations you did not chase. It becomes a kind of gravity around your name. This is the honor economy at work. It compounds quietly through consistency until one day it looks like momentum, and some call it luck. Excellence remains honest only when it grows from the inside out. Golden wallpaper over a cracked wall cannot hold weather. Protocol without heart becomes theater that exhausts everyone on stage. The strength that lasts begins with clean scales in the private places. It keeps promises when delight is gone. It tells the truth even when delay would hide it. It pays what is owed with a steady hand. It treats the smallest client like a neighbor, not a stepping stone. From that soil, beauty grows without pretense, and order serves without cruelty. The room that results is not stiff. It is alive and dependable. I have seen lives change when honor is allowed to lead the details. A quiet designer rebuilt the way proposals introduced her work with words that were plain and generous. A small practice reshaped the first moments of every meeting so people arrived unhurried and left with a map rather than a brochure. A builder gave his teams simple rhythms that brought projects in on time without burning the brightest out. None of these were grand gestures. Each was a signpost that said, "You are safe here." The effect was measurable in accounts, but the deeper measure was in faces that looked rested and in teams that felt proud to carry the name. There is a question that reveals what all the polish and order are trying to say. What does your environment say about your stewardship when you are not in the room? Let the words settle until they echo softly. If the answer feels tender, do not rush past it. Tender truth is often the birthplace of enduring strength. Honor longs to be visible not for applause, but for clarity. It wants the outer world to match the inner one so that there is no split to maintain and no mask to hold. When excellence becomes a language rather than a performance, the atmosphere shifts. The anxious pitch gives way to a steady presence. The need to convince gives way to the joy of serving. Partners arrive who hear the same music. Opportunities come that fit instead of injure. Giving becomes easy because fear is not driving the car. This is how reputation grows into wealth without hollowing the soul that carries it. This is how a name becomes a shelter for others, and how prosperity turns into a place rather than a moment. Polished gates, quiet rooms, true scales in hidden corners, the honor economy compounding day by day until what once felt distant begins to feel like home. There is a way that panic spends wealth faster than any expense line. It spends attention, it spends sleep, it spends the small courtesies that make work a place of trust. Panic turns a season into a siege and teaches the body to brace until bracing becomes a habit. The ancient story remembers a different order, a wide peace, a careful plan, craftspeople at work without the taste of war in the mouth. The result was not only abundance, the result was stability. What arrives in peace tends to stay because it is not forced in through a door it does not fit. It is welcomed, tended, and given a place. Think of wealth as water. It falls like rain when a market warms or a project blooms. It fills the air with promise and the ground with hope. Yet rain alone does not feed a city. Without channels, the water runs wild and disappears into low places. Without cisterns, there is nothing to draw from when the sky clears. Systems are the quiet stonework that turn weather into provision. They are the banks that give the river its strength. They are the terrace lines on a hillside that keep the soil from slipping away. When they are in place, prosperity learns to linger. The nervous system hears the difference between chaos and order in an instant. In chaos, the breath shortens and the mind scans instead of seeing. In order, the chest opens and the brain's careful regions come back online. Planning returns. Patience returns. The unnecessary fires no longer demand water at every hour. In this state, decisions become honest about cost and benefit. Investments are weighed without the tremor of fear steering the hand. Limits no longer feel like punishment. They feel like protection. Diversification is one of those words that bruises the ears with its own dryness, yet holds a tender kind of safety. It means no single stream controls the health of the whole garden. It means craft and trade and knowledge and relationships all share the work of provision. When one path narrows, another opens. When a season shifts, the roots do not. Many learned this when a single client left or a single platform changed its rules. The lesson was sharp. The wisdom is gentle. Spread the weight so that no single pillar must carry the entire roof. Limits belong in this room with the same dignity as opportunity. They are not walls that keep life out. They are walls that keep life in. A project that does not grow beyond its design can stay beautiful. An appetite that has a boundary can stay grateful. A calendar with white space can welcome surprise without breaking. This is not a rejection of ambition. It is ambition that remembers the human frame. It is enterprise that knows the soul is not a machine. Reserves change the atmosphere in ways no speech can manage. A small store set aside turns fear into patience. Patience allows wisdom to see options that panic would miss. The mind that is not cornered does not sign away futures for the relief of the present tense. The team that knows tomorrow will be met with something more than wishes can bring their best again. This is not romance. It is the simple physics of peace, where fear loosens, judgment steadies. Rhythm matters more than intensity. A single sprint can produce a headline. A steady cadence can build a lineage. The most enduring work often moves like the sea. Tides in and tides out. Effort and rest. Focus and release. Markets rise and fall, seasons warm and cool. Systems listen to this music and arrange the work so that no beat is wasted. Review days keep truth near. Quiet pauses keep wisdom near. The result is a name that does not have to be defended each month from the weather. There is a tender caution to speak here with compassion. Greed does not announce itself with a snarl. It often arrives dressed as urgency. It says that one more deal will create safety. It says that rest can wait until the next milestone. It says that generosity belongs on the far side of a finish line that keeps moving. The old counsel answers this voice with a steady gaze. Love of money is a hunger that grows by what it eats. The heart that knows enough can finally taste joy. The hands that release can finally hold without fear. Some speak of 3 walls that protect a house from the winds that visit every life. One wall is the habit of setting aside a portion that will become tomorrow's seed. One wall is a steady gift that keeps the river from turning in on itself and going stale. One wall is a firm boundary where daily costs end so that purpose is not mortgaged to appetite. These walls are not cages. They are guardians. They allow the courtyard to fill with laughter. They make room for strangers to become friends. They keep the door open for wisdom when the air grows thin. Picture the channels cut with patience through dry ground. At first they look like scars across the earth. Then the rain returns and those scars become lifelines. Water moves where it is welcomed. Fields wake. Orchards carry fruit. Homes store sweetness for the winter that always comes. When prosperity meets such preparation, it becomes more than a season. It becomes a culture. Children grow up inside it and learn its music. Strangers feel it and understand that dignity lives here. A question stands like a lantern in the dusk. If wealth is a river, where does yours escape? When you walk the banks in the quiet of your own honesty, what kinds of stonework rise in your imagination? Often, the answer is smaller than pride suggests and stronger than fear expects. A modest channel built with care. A hidden cistern that will matter on a lean day. A boundary that allows the fruit of your labor to rest in your own hands long enough to bless your life and the lives that touch yours. Systems guard the treasure. Peace guards the person who carries it. Diversification guards the future from being held hostage by a single mood or market. Limits guard the joy that can get lost in victory as easily as in loss. Cisterns and channels, stone and water, order before overflow. When these become the quiet architecture of a life, prosperity stops arriving like weather and begins to dwell like a trusted guest. The story has carried us from a foundation stone set in quiet earth to a true scale that settles the room, from harbors that welcome returning ships to polished gates that speak with dignity, from cisterns and channels that tame the rain to a peace that guards what arrives. Each image is a doorway into the same house, a house where wisdom stands at the center and wealth becomes its faithful servant. As this journey gathers itself, you can feel the order of it in your body. The breath becomes deeper, the shoulders lower. The mind stops scanning for the next alarm and begins to recognize patterns that were present all along. What once felt like 100 separate rules now feels like a single living rhythm. There is a simple cadence many have trusted because it is gentle and firm at the same time. It moves like a quiet arc over a week, and it names what the heart already knows. Wisdom first begins each morning with the inner instrument tuned before the noise begins. Clear outcome. Audit turns skills into outcomes that other lives can feel and measure. Alliance map draws the contours of trust so that work travels in company rather than in loneliness. Honor audit lets the outer rooms match the inner life until reputation becomes a river and not a rumor. Solomon's 3 walls guard the joy of your labor through allocation, generosity, and a calm boundary where appetite bows to purpose. None of these demand a performance. Each of them protects a posture. Each of them keeps the order that keeps the soul. When such a cadence takes root, the nervous system learns a new story. Threat becomes information rather than identity. Urgency loses its mask and is seen for what it is. The prefrontal mind steadies and plans with clean hands. Emotional memory begins to trust that safety can be chosen and not only begged for. Spiritual attention and practical patterning meet without conflict. What you honor in private begins to appear in public without strain. People feel it before they name it. Partners feel it and draw near. Opportunity feels it and stops behaving like weather. Wealth feels it and decides to stay. This is why the oldest line in this house still rings like something newly discovered. Wisdom first, then wealth. Spoken slowly, it becomes more than a claim. It becomes a compass. It becomes a safeguard when doors fly open. It becomes courage when doors stay shut longer than you hoped. It becomes humility when applause arrives too soon. And it becomes endurance when results bloom later than planned. The sequence keeps you human while you grow strong. The sequence keeps you generous while you grow visible. The sequence keeps you honest while you grow influential. There is a tender question that belongs at the end of a road like this, a question that does not accuse and does not rush. If wisdom became your first request this week, what would change first? Your accounts or your judgment? Let it rest on the tongue like a prayer you do not have to force. Notice the place in your chest that answers. Notice the quiet shift in the atmosphere around you when the answer is allowed to be simple. Often the change that matters most is not grand. Often it is a small hinge that turns a heavy door and makes a future possible. The map is clear now, a foundation stone that holds its line, a true scale that keeps the measure honest, harbors and ships that share the work of distance, polished gates that tell the truth about the house they guard, cisterns and channels that transform weather into provision. These are not slogans. They are the architecture of a life that can carry blessing without breaking. They are the quiet practices that let prosperity enter through a door it will not have to leave in haste. They are the reasons a name becomes shelter for others and not a storm. So the story settles into its final cadence. Wisdom first, then wealth. Order before overflow. Character before crowns. Said with kindness, it steadies the heart. Said with conviction, it steadies the hand. And in that steadying, you can feel the future turn toward you with something like relief. Not because the road will never climb, but because you now carry the design that makes the climb worth the view.